when I decide what we're going to do and not do in my classroom, I align the rules, the procedures, the norms with my values as an educator and with my needs and with the values and needs of the students, which we talk about early in the year because people do have different needs. Okay. So when I talk about how, the students, the way that they eat food all day long in the classroom drives me bananas and that kind of stuff. A natural response I get sometimes, just thinking it myself or sometimes other folks asking, well, then why do you allow food at all? Why don't you just say no food at all? And I had a little trouble coming up with, a good answer to this because there's more than one possible answer. But the best answer I can say is that when I decide whether something is something that we do in our classroom or not, I base that decision on my professional values and my needs. What do I need to have happen in order for my values to be upheld? So communication and community in general is one of my major values. So anything that is happening in the classroom needs to be enhancing and supporting that community. Anything that would interfere with or undermine or harm that community, we need to intervene and we need to discuss and we need to change. So coming back to, okay, so why allow food at all? Well, the reason is because if I can meet my professional needs and uphold my values by saying yes to something, then I'm going to say yes to it. If I can meet those needs and to uphold those values by saying no to something, then I will say no to it. If I can meet those professional needs and uphold values by saying yes to something with conditions, then that is what I will do. In other words, I will be making decisions based on needs and not necessarily based on preferences, because I'm trying to get my students to do the same thing, right? If I'm saying that, I want you to contribute to class discussion because you have a need to develop speaking and listening skills, because it's part of the standards, because it's part of college and career readiness, then I want students to take the risk and take the difficult step of speaking up in class, even if it's not their natural preference. I'm trying to train students to honor the difference between preferences and needs, and I'm modeling that behavior myself. So, am I able? Is there a set of conditions that I can have in place regarding food in the classroom that enables me to meet my professional need? I need to be able to hear students, right? I need to be able to be focused on what I'm saying and on what they're saying. I need to have a clean space, and I need students to be focused on learning and to be productive. So if there's a way that we can have those needs met with you having access to food during class, then that's something that we can talk about. So what are the conditions? I can't smell the food. Okay, so if you're bringing in hot food, that's a problem. Okay, if we're bringing in food from Chick-fil-A, from Dunkin', causing a smell in the whole room, I find that's very unfair, right? Not everybody gets to have that food, and also it's offensive. You're creating an odor in the whole room that other people have to smell. I do not consent to that. So no hot food in the room. I can't see it. I also can't hear it, right? So if the constant rustling of the bag, opening a bag of chips is a major, come into any classroom, you would think it's the first time the kid was ever opening a bag of chips. It's a huge production. It takes like minutes. Constant rustling of the bag. Distracting to me, distracting to the student because they're so focused on getting this bag open or these Pop-Tarts open or something like that. And then I can't hear students can't hear each other. So I can't smell it and I can't hear the things associated with it. Can't be a mess left behind, right? We honor this space, we respect the space, we clean it up, we keep it sanitary. It's a sanitary need. We show respect for the next person who's going to be using the space by cleaning up. So if I'm seeing a pattern of leaving a mess behind, we're going to have to talk about not having that food or maybe not having any food. It's possible, but again, can we meet that need while still having it? So can't um, smell it, can't hear it, and the student is able to focus on work. So if your attention is so devoted to the food that you're not getting your work done, or it's significantly impeding your work, then we're going to have to talk about an alternative, because the food has now become a distraction to you. Another limit is there's no coming in and sharing food with some students and not others. And sharing food with everybody would be a special occasion thing, but if it were, the sharing food is going to be disruptive, because now, again, you're interrupting the experience of every other person in the room. But especially if you're just coming in and handing out food to certain students, that's not fair. That's not equitable. That's not okay in this space. So there would have to be something where, you share with everybody or you share with nobody. And right now we're not sharing with everybody because we're not having a class party. We're not having snack. That's not what we're doing right now. That would interfere with our needs as professionals. So no sharing, no hot food, can't be making noises, can't be distracting you from learning. So we talk with students about, can those four needs, can those four must-haves or non-negotiables be met? Well, sometimes the answer is yes. I'll pass by students and they have like a small bowl of cut up strawberries or something, and they're just nibbling on that. They're getting their work done. They're participating in discussion. I can't smell the food. I can't hear. There's no bags rustling or anything like that. I don't find it a problem. I don't find it a problem for the student. I don't find it a problem for me. I don't think that it's offensive. They're not leaving a mess behind or anything like that. And so if you're asking me, why don't you just say no altogether to food and drink in the classroom? That's the reason. Now, would it be easier? Would I prefer to just say no food and drink in this space during class time unless it's a special occasion? Well, yeah, that would still be. I would still say that that's a preference. But what I'm not going to do is to create a potentially adversarial relationship with a student just to meet my own preference that is not even addressing a professional need, right? If I'm going to draw a firm line with a student, that could potentially cause some friction between us, and it could. I need to make sure that I'm doing it to meet a professional need, and that's when it comes to the whole, is this a hill that you're going to die on type of thing. I used to resent even being asked that. I'm the teacher, and what I want is what's going to happen in this classroom. When I say no, that means no, and that's just it. But I wasn't really thinking about why I was saying no, right? And if we're not thinking about why we're saying no, or why we're not saying, well, yes, with a set of conditions that if you don't meet them, we're going to have to talk about, now it's a no. And then we're going to have to talk about going to consequences and things like that. We need to be thoughtful about when we pull out that no and when we insist on it, because I'm not going to deliver a no that I'm not prepared to uphold. If there is something that we can negotiate and that we can talk about the conditions, then that's the discussion we're going to have. Because what I'm not going to do is say hard no, and then the kid does something in a way that I find I can tolerate, and so I just let it happen after saying hard no. Because I just created an inconsistency in my message there, which undermines my authority as a teacher anyway. It undermines my trust, my ethos, right? I'm not talking about, well, I'm older than you and so I necessarily know better. That's not always true, okay? I bring a lot of knowledge and experience that I do expect you to have a level of respect for. But what I'm really talking about here is that I need to be modeling and mirroring the kind of habits and professional dispositions that I want my students to be developing, and to say that sometimes we choose to work with things that are not our natural preference, but that we can deal with, that are not a significant disruption, and we can respect the fact that these differences do exist in this space, and we can let that happen. And so coming back to, is this a hill I'm going to die on? No, provided that we can say this space is safe, it is clean, we were able to focus, we are not distracting other people, we're able to focus on our own work. When these conditions are met, we can talk about the yeses and the nos to these things, and it's going to vary from class to class. There will be classes where you can say yes to something and classes where you have to say no to something. But that's what I talk about when I talk about flexibility. We can be flexible about our rules, and then we can also be firm about the conditions that have to be met.